Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June Zoom Citrus Workshop. Thank you for joining us. First, I would like to thank Alison Walton from the HLB-IFAS Center for her help and cooperation. Today's program offers 1 CEU for pesticide license renewal and 1 CEU for certified crop advisors. If you need CEUs, email me your name, email address, and license number. And I put my email address on the chat box. Our guest speaker this morning is Dr. Arnold Schumann. He's a professor in soil and water sciences at the UF-IFAS Citrus Research and Education Center in Lake Alfred. The title of his presentation is HLB-free citrus production for the fresh fruit market using cups. The presentation will include update on 8 contiguous years of grapefruit yields in cups, update on other promising varieties for cups, final results from experiments to improve color break and internal fruit quality in cups using photo-selective shadecloth, and preliminary results from the use of plant growth promoting bacteria and biofungicides in cups. Dr. Schumann, it's all yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Zekri, and good morning, everybody. Some of you have met with me before and seen some of the research we've been doing now for nearly, I think July will be 9 years. So roughly 8 seasons coming out of that, 9 years of actual since construction. And this is an update. You can see the cups we have down on the bottom of the screen. So it's not the first time, obviously, I'm presenting these results, but it's important to do some updates. There's a team of people that currently we have working on cups research. Laura Waldo, Tim Ebert, Napoleon Marina, Laura Cano-Castro, Perseveranca Mangofa, and Shankar Shrestha. Those last 3 are the program students working on cups. And just by introduction, let's go back through the content of today's talk. A little background, like I said, some of you may be new to the idea, but most of you have seen it already and seen the results. Status at current season, which is the 8th season, so at about 8.5 years is the most recent results I can show you. We'll touch a bit again on psyllid exclusion, although not much. That's been pretty much verified. Fruit color break, we'll go back to that using bags or colored screens. Grapefruit production, being that it's the most productive proven variety, we'll look at that in a little bit more depth. Touch a bit on other varieties that are looking really promising in cups. And then look at this new area we're investigating, which is the use of regenerative agriculture. You've probably heard about that. It's pretty much an up and coming area of research. And particularly we were interested in disease control with biofungicides, but also just to improve the growth of the trees. So just a real fast recap. Here's the disease cycle for HLB and its associated components. You have the host at the bottom, the pathogen Liberibacter asiaticus on the left, and then on the top is the psyllid that spreads the bacteria between the hosts. And then on the right-hand side is environment, and that's really what I want to emphasize. That's how we can modify the disease cycle or break the cycle, because we can exclude the psyllid, the ACP, from the cycle by modifying the environment with the cups. Again, just a quick recap, we use fertigation. These are some of the components we have. We've used liquid fertigation for the entire 8.5 years. Phosphoric acid, sulfuric acid also included, and everything is injected with peristaltic pumps into a mixing tank, which undergoes testing by computer with a electrical conductivity sensor before pumping it out to the trees. And we got really good results with that real early on. Again, grapefruit being the top performer. You can get a economical yield in year 2 at commercial spacings. So obviously what I'm showing you here, you can see immediately is not commercial spacing. This is 5 by 10 feet. So we were getting yields that were economical in the first and second year already. But that's because of the high density we were implementing here. But the good news is that for commercially spaced trees, let's say higher than average, but up to 300 and some 360 trees per acre, you can get economical yields at the end of year 2 going into year 3. I'm talking about very high yields, 500 plus boxes per acre. And so these were initially planted in pots just to make it possible to grow more trees in a tighter density, a higher density. And later they were removed and put in the ground. Let's see my screen. Now I've got control. Okay. So this was at 2.5 years then. You've got this situation where you have a very high yield already. Good quality fruit. Proof of that is that we sell all our grapefruit to a packing house that happens to be the Dundee packing house. They grade it, they sort it, they give us the data on it, internal and external, and the quality has been good. The sizes are excellent. So, and they ship it off and sell it commercially. And so what happened here at the transition of year 5 to 6, historically, with our grapefruits in the cups, this is the view of them. At year 5, they were encountering some serious root binding problems, root circling in the pots. So the pots were no longer viable. The symptom we measured was that the fruit size was diminishing, and that's bad for grapefruit. It reduces their sale value, the pack out is poor, the grading is poor. So we had to do something about that. We just simply removed them from the pots, dumped them in the ground, and in that same year, they flowered and set fruit. So no big problem. This is at year 6, a year later, and they are in full production again, and the size of the fruit did increase again. And in fact, in this year, January 2022, that's pictured here, the crop was worth $20,000 per acre in that 1 year at 7.5 years age. So I believe the yield was in the 800s, which it has been almost every year. Pack out was 99%, 100%, and that's what produces that type of revenue, $20,000 per acre per year. So some of the highlights I just want to put in text here. HLB incidence remains really low. It's about between 0.5% and 0.75% after 8.5 years. So this main psyllid infestations we had were during rescreening or any time that the screen has been opened, maybe ruptured from a hurricane, that type of thing. But the HLB spread as a result of that was fortunately minimal. And the psyllids that we eliminate, they were fairly easily eliminated at the time with insecticides. But we also captured some and tested them with PCR for the incidence of CLAS, and the positivity was 0. It was, I mean, we didn't do an exhaustive test. We obviously didn't test every psyllid, but the ones we tested, which was quite a few dozen, they were all 0. So what happens is it's a dilution effect. You get a small incursion of psyllids into the cups, which are no doubt carrying CLAS. But they start multiplying, and as they multiply, the egg laying process filters out the CLAS. It's only about a 6% transmission, or should I say, through flow of the CLAS bacteria from the female to the through egg laying and into the new nymphs. That data has been published by the entomologists. So every generation you get a 6% throughput only. So it's cleaning out the population. That's what we think is happening. And so in the end, you get a fairly clean population, almost undetectable CLAS in the cups, provided you keep the population really small. And of course, you want to eliminate them. But the good news is that during that time that they're in the cups, they're not highly positive. So I think that explains why the spread of HLB is minimal. So cumulative grapefruit yields and our best type of combination of density and rootstock has been 7,300 boxes per acre over 8.5 years. Divide that by 10 to get metric tons per hectare, if you like. So it would be 73 metric tons per hectare. Another highlight is that fruit quality was enhanced by fine-tuning fertilization, and also the fruit flavors that we experienced just by sampling and tasting the fruit were completely untainted by HLB. The fruit from the cups tastes like it used to before HLB existed in Florida. Tastes really good with no hint of any side off tastes. And there are also no brick problems whatsoever because it's HLB-free fruit. We don't have any problems reaching the acceptable bricks levels. Then talking about the biofungicides, a highlight of that is that the PGPB, which is plant growth promoting bacteria, and I'll get to that in more detail, they were able to improve the integrated pest management and sustainability, in our opinion, of the cups. And we've done just 1 year of that, and I'll show you the results. But it looks extremely promising as another tool to improve IPM and sustainability of cups and productivity, which is part of the sustainability equation. A big bonus that just came about out of the blue was that we found over 8.5 years, and it'd been verified by commercial cups, other growers, that citrus canker doesn't survive in cups, probably because there's not enough wind-blown rain. The wind velocity is really low in there. It's about only 1/3 at the most of what the wind velocity is outside. So during a typical summer thunderstorm, it's calm in there and it doesn't spread. However, severe winds like hurricanes have been a problem. So last year we had 2 of them. They both passed over this area. Both eyes actually passed over this area, but the first one was more damaging. I'm sorry, Ian did not pass over this area, but it was a massive hurricane, as those of you in the south know. Horrible. So we got considerable damage from that. He had opened up our cup's roof. Then the second one, I think it was called Nicole, did pass directly over us, but so we got the impact of direct passing over, but it was not as powerful a storm. But the good news then is that the damage was moderate only. Excellent news was that the trees and fruit crops in the cups were completely undamaged. So therefore there was no post-hurricane recovery period, which often lasts multiple years if you have outdoor citrus. Trees are blown over, most of the fruit drops, etc. None of that happened. So the trees just carried on like nothing happened. No damage. Here's just a photo. On the left, you can see the roof was split open from north to south completely, but within a day or two, we were able to get it patched, as you can see on the right. And then a few months later, we booked a professional repair company to come and replace that roof panel. So now it's like good as new. So let's go on to the grapefruit then, which has been our top performer. And this is the one that's produced over 7,000 boxes per acre in just 8.5 years. I like to call it the wall of fruit, which it really is. It's a very high density, granted, but the good news is that commercial cups growers at much more moderate densities, like 360, are getting the same type of results, that's really exciting. So the bottom line is you're growing X amount of canopy and it produces X amount of fruit. The only advantage of this very high density is you're getting it faster. With a lower density, it may take you 3 to 4 years or even 5 to get to a very high yield, but it's much faster than outdoor grown citrus. So that's what it looks like. And here's the results of that, how it added up to 7,300 boxes. So you can see right on the very first season, it was already 100 boxes per acre, which was viable to market. Over 200 the second year, and then it jumped up and it stayed right there at about 1,000 on average, twice reaching nearly 1,400 boxes per acre, even this last year. So there's no sign of decline. So these trees were planted in 2014. You can see the timeline then and the following seasons. Let's go to what is it really worth? Okay, big deal, 7,300 boxes. Let's get some numbers to it, some dollar numbers. The net fruit revenue, and I emphasize net because that's after deduction of all the costs of harvesting, transport, packing, and shipping. That's the money coming back to the farm, adds up to $131,000 over 8 years per acre. And these were using moderately, I think, conservative prices. We've usually been able to get in the range of $24 to $26 per box. So I decided you always have to be conservative when you make a projection, or at least when you translate it into what really is feasible for just anybody to achieve. So I lowered that price to 20. That is my assumption. And I also lowered the pack out. We're getting 99 to 100% most years. On rare occasions, we've been down in the low 90s. So I assume, let's just be conservative and make it 90% pack out. All right, and so what do we get with that? Let's see here. Okay, sorry. Keep having problems with my screen. Okay, so that is equivalent. I did a comparison then with outdoor grown HLB endemic grapefruit production. And that's what this 49 years equates to. Outdoor production of grapefruit was quoted at 267 boxes per acre by the Statistics Service and that year, and it's probably even lower now. This is just a number that's a few years old already. Using the same value, which is probably not fair because the fruit from outdoors doesn't have as good a size. It's probably less than that. So I'm being quite easy on the outdoor fruit here, allowing it at $20 per box. But the pack out is realistically 50% or less. That is a fact. And a large part of that is because of the size of the fruit. It's too small to pack. So therefore, you can halve this number here, 267 boxes per acre. The usable fruit is only half of that. And then looking at the revenue generated, the equivalent years it would take to reach the cups revenue, which is 131,000. It would take 49 years to do that. I mean, it would take a lifetime. Whereas the cups did it in 8 years. So that's the relationship. That's really what the value of it is. So think about it also. It's much more than that. It's not just fruit revenue. Think about it. For 49 years, you're spending caretaking costs, fertilizer, things that actually damage the environment when overused. If you have 49 years of fertilizer versus just 8 years of fertilizer at the same rate, which is that's absolutely true, guess what's having a higher impact? I mean, it's the 49 years. Irrigation, you're pumping water out of the aquifer for 49 years to get the same revenue as you do for 8 years pumping water out the aquifer. Insurance, environmental impacts, other impacts, spraying, pesticides. 49 years of spraying versus 8 years with cups. Another way to look at it is, and in terms of acres, of course, you can translate that to area. So 8 acres of cups produces the same revenue as 49 conventional acres, 6.2 times difference. Now, bear in mind, as I said up here, that I was being conservative, first of all, and secondly, the price for the HLB endemic fruit is probably not as good as 20. So I'm leaning towards saying the difference is more like a 9 times. I mean, to make a round number, you could say getting probably maximum 10 times difference in revenue generation. I don't think that's unrealistic. Let's look at a little bit more in depth at the quality of the fruit. A huge component of what price you get and what revenue you can generate for grapefruit is the size of it. And you can see that here, the breakdown. These are the different size categories of grapefruit. And these are the actual prices we were getting in 2022. And you can see that the sweet spots here are from size 40 to 27. So 27 being the largest. And as you can see, ranging from $20 to $28. And we were averaging most of the time 24 to 26 for our entire harvest. So in other words, on average, for all the sizes of fruit we were producing. And you can see these are the 85% of our grapefruit harvest coming out of cups was in this desirable range, which is 40, 36, 32, 27 size classes. And only a small amount was in the undesirable small fruit sizes. Pack out also was 98% in this given year. I believe it was actually closer to 99. It was 98.5 or something like that. So you could round it, should have been rounded up to 99. Doesn't matter. And in fact, as I said, the net return per field box was $24 that year. So on average, over all these prices, ranging from 20 all the way from 16 actually to 28. If you average that all with the amount produced in each class, the average price we got was $24 coming back to the farm. Compare that to outdoor grown fruit. Now, this is based on those NAS statistics from Florida for outdoor grown HLB endemic citrus. As of March 2022, so it's the same year, pack out was probably less than 50%, as I already explained earlier on, because look at this, more than 50% of the grapefruit and the outdoor grown trees is in the 63 plus size class, which is not generally, I think, considered a pack out class. So only these sizes were packed, and in fact, compared to the 85% of desirable classes in the cups, only 23% of the outdoor grown fruit were in the desirable classes. So a huge difference in quality for grapefruit. All right, so that takes care of the, I think the prospects, the reason why we're excited about grapefruit in cups. You can see why. I will give you a bit of a spoiler alert here that next month there is a citrus industry article by Ariel Singerman, and I co-authored it, but Ariel wrote most of it. Complete economic analysis of our CREC cups, and spoiler alert is that it is profitable. So even our non-commercial cups has turned out a profitable enterprise. But the commercial growers with cups are doing far better than that. They are doing really well. All right, so let's move on to the next topic here, which is the use of photoselective shade cloths. The idea came about because we thought, what if we cover use the screen to cover the cups that is colored instead of being just transparent? What if we use color tones? How will it affect fruit quality? That's the main thing we were interested in. But also at the same time, it shouldn't hurt tree growth. So first of all, we wanted to determine if we can get this kind of color effect, as you see on the bottom left corner here, of a fruit using artificial shading, which can achieve the same as the leaf shading does here. The nice pink blush on the grapefruit there, you can see, was caused by shading of the leaves. So we decided we ran an experiment over 3 years with different colored bags, as you can see there. A little bit of background might help here also. The factors that affect the breakdown of chlorophyll, which is green, and cause the development of color, which is the chromoplasts. Studies in the literature have shown that temperature certainly affects it. We know that as it gets cooler in the fall season going into winter, that promotes carotenoids, which are the orangey colored ones, and breakdown of chlorophyll. Sometimes I think also xanthophylls, which is the yellow. So what affects it also is nutrition. You want to keep nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium low, especially nitrogen, and that enhances the color break. And light intensity affects it. As you can see in nature, wherever the leaves cover the fruit, it tends to promote chlorophyll breakdown and promotes carotenoids. And you can see on the bottom left there, that leaf has been moved, and you can see underneath it's nice and pink. Same with the one in the middle and the one on the right. So this work, I had to acknowledge, I've nearly forgot. Let's go right back here. Is work done by Laura Walder. She's pictured at the top. And it was presented at the Florida State Horticulture meeting in the past 2 years, I think 2021 and 2022. All right, let's carry on here. So what this update is only for year 3, or primarily about year 3. We used many different colors in that particular year, and it was done on Ray Ruby grapefruit and also on W. Murcott tangerines. The trees were in pots, 7-year-old trees, and the 6 colors were black, red, green, blue, white, pink, and control with no bag. There were 7 replications, 3 bags per treatment. The time period for covering the fruit was August 11 to December 9 in 2021 for grapefruit, and then for Murcott it was August 12 to December 8. So 17 weeks. Each one was 17 weeks. And let's look at the results. You can see that what this table shows is first of all, on the first column is the different colors of screen that were used in bags to cover the fruit. The other numbers are L star, A star, and B star. And L star is the lightness or darkness of the peel color. So we measure that photographically. So going from black to white, basically. A star is the amount of redness, but it transitions from a 0 being neutral, and then negative numbers would be green, positive numbers are red. Okay, so you can see these are all redder colors, but notice they're different. The best one being, I believe this one here, yep, from the green screen, see 14.62, and it was statistically significant. Now B star was, I won't dwell on it, but that's the yellowness color, and it was non-significant. It's just a standard way of portraying color, especially on things like fruit. It's measured in packing houses and so on. So we did get an increase in redness from the different colored screens. And here it is graphically. You can see on the left-hand side is the control, uncovered fruit. White screen doesn't work well. Black screen doesn't work. Works quite well, but not as well finally as the green, as I pointed out. And it's interesting. The green filters out red and blue light mainly and allows green light through. So it does a similar thing to what leaves do in nature. Leaves absorb blue light and red light. Very interesting. And here's a graph, just visually, you can see the control fruits is on the left, and you can see the increase in redness on the the fruits that had been covered with green bags. We tried the same thing, as I said, that the experiment was repeated with W. Murcott, and we got no significant results. See, everything is NS. Very tiny, non-significant differences. It's not amenable to developing color with shading, it looks like. So that was the result of that. And you can see with the graphs also, it's non-significant. Also notice that the grapefruits, only the red component was affected, not the yellow component. And with the grapefruit, the red component is the blush. The yellow component is the matrix color for the whole fruit. So that is also very interesting to us. So it doesn't look like with shading, you can't manipulate the matrix color, but you can manipulate the blush. Right, so internal color was also a point of interest. So we did examine we sliced all the fruits open, examined them, measured the color, and everything was non-significant, which we kind of expected. So nothing happens to the color internally. And likewise, the juice quality and the fruit quality was not affected. How does it compare with the previous years? Let's do a quick summary here. From 2019, we were looking at UF-914 only. That's what got us interested in looking at this prospect of using shading first, because UF-914 was a newly released UF variety, and we wanted to increase its appearance, improve its appearance. And we found that black, red, green, and blue bags all helped improve the color. There's the control, so that's got an A statistically, and most of these were in the B range here, especially red, green, and blue. Significantly increased the redness. Again, it's only the redness that increased. You notice the yellowness, nothing. And of course, the lightness either didn't change. So then we looked at, I wanted to point out here, I highlighted the green. The green bags again did the best. So green color definitely has something going for it. Likewise, Ray Ruby in 2020, that was the second year, the best effect was achieved with the green bags, 13.1, increased the redness of the Ray Ruby grapefruit. W. Murcott, of course, as you know, was non-significant, and we only did 1 year of that. Okay, so in conclusion, black, blue, and red bags increase external A-star values on Ray Ruby and grapefruit. Green bags, however, have the consistently the highest A-star values, and grapefruit and the grapefruit hybrid being UF-914. So that has the best potential of all. And the bag color has no effect on the external field color development of W. Murcott. And color bags did not have an effect on the internal juice quality, color or quality either. So we've pretty much explored grapefruit, and we have 3 grapefruit varieties. We have Flame Grapefruit, Ray Ruby Red, and Ray Ruby Grapefruit. Those are the only 3 we have, but they all perform really well. Here's a picture of it. So that's the grapefruits, at least these 3, I can honestly say, are all going to do really well in cups. It's possible that some of the other grapefruit varieties we didn't test do not do well. So just bear that in mind before you start to plant large acreages. Do a little bit of testing of those. But we can say with safety that these are good. Here's Ray Ruby grapefruit in cups, just a picture of its productivity. This is more recent, just to show you. This is just taken December of last year at the 8th harvest. That's what they look like. Trees are getting bigger. So what about other varieties? We don't want to just grow grapefruit. So we've been looking at, we have about 23 varieties, including experimental, unreleased ones that we keep looking at in the cups. And I mainly focus on the ones that you well know. Murcott which is the honey Murcott, as a very favorite Florida variety, I believe. Shown here in this picture. This was taken in 2020. Again in 2020, very good production. It's not seedless. It does have seeds in the cups, but they are lower seeded than outdoor grown Murcott. And again, W. Murcott, what are its prospects? You see, it's now getting old and it's still in pots. 2020. I just wanted to update on that. Prospects for the current, the previous season, this was taken in December. These have already been picked now, but they will still look very, very good last year on the 8th harvest. As you can see here, this was prior to actually color break, and they were picked at the end of January. So up to the 8th year, those pots were still sustaining the trees. However, we are starting to see something this season, which indicates the pots are starting to run out of, truly running out of space now. You can see that it's mostly trunk and it's just solid wooden roots inside there. I mean, it feels like wood, they're hard roots. So it's becoming really difficult to manage water and nutrients in these pots. So it looks like the longevity of a variety like Murcott in pots is probably maximum 8 years, but it's much longer than we thought. So we're very pleased with that result. All right, so moving on to UF-914, it continues to do really well in cups, comparable to grapefruit. It's also seedless, which is great. And it has more of a pomelo type flavor, those of you that know it. Yields are, as I said, are comparable to grapefruit, around about 800 boxes per acre. That's what we measured in year 4. W. Murcott can do really well, although most years it has problems with color break. This particular year when I took these, I think it might have been 2020 or 21, the temperatures in the fall helped get a really good color break. So these are classic nice photos of what can be achieved. And most years they have a little bit of an issue with color break, which is why we tried that research with the colored bags. I don't really know what exactly the solution is for it, so be careful with W. Murcott. Commercial growers have also reported issues with color break, and so have outdoor non-cups growers. And I believe the Tango, which is the seedless version of W. Murcott, is also a little shy on breaking color in Florida. It's a climate thing. It's a Florida thing. So Dancy, on the other hand, colors up beautifully every time. It's a favorite variety in Florida. It's grown in cups. It's a little bit seedy, 2 seeds, much less than Murcott, but it's not totally seedless. Production has been really good, but both it and Murcott are quite strongly alternate bearing. They put on big crops and then smaller crops the next year. So that's Dancy. Very clean fruit. Of course, if you know the fruit, those of you that know the fruit, it's a thinnish fruit, thinnish peel. So transportation has to be kind of managed around minimizing any damage. But it's feasible. It's my favorite personally. It's a great tasting fruit. It peels easily. It's like a zipper peel. It's clean looking, and the flavor is quite unique. It's a very spicy type of flavor. So I'd say that has great prospects for growing more of. Early Pride is a firm favorite because it ripens as early as September, October. So it hits the early market. And it has some issues with the cracking. We're working on that now. And Fruit Set has been greatly helped by using gibberellic acid. We have proof of that now. I'm not going to show you the results of that. But gibberellic acid sprays during full bloom have greatly helped improve Fruit Set to commercially viable levels. The flavor of all these fruits, including Early Pride, is really good. There's no, like I said, no hint of any HLB or flavors. So it's a superior product in all these cultivars when grown in cups. It's not the same as outdoors. So we even tried this old variety, Temple, and it's alternate bearing, granted. So last year was a good yield, as you can see here. This was 2023, harvested in January. But this year it's a bit shy, it's resting. So a lot of these non-grapefruit varieties do have the alternate bearing pattern you have to be aware of. But the quality was superb. I made a lot of juice out of it. I ate it fresh. We don't have enough trees to sell it. Not like the grapefruits, but we really enjoyed it. This is another one, superb quality in the cups. That's Mineola, completely seedless, and yields were viable for commercial production, I believe. Again, we only have, I think it's 15 trees, so we couldn't sell the fruit commercially, but we enjoyed them. Large fruit and beautiful fruit. Sugar Bell can do very well in cups, although some commercial growers have had problems with it when grown in the ground. I'll show you why. I've got a picture of it, the comparison. Most of ours are in pots right from the beginning, as are some of our other varieties. And it just turned out a good match. I think the root to shoot ratio that it achieves in the pots, because it's a constricted root system, really helps it set fruit, much like girdling wood, something like that. But we also use gibberellic acid to help set fruit. So this is Sugar Bell close up. This is it from a distance. These trees, this is from December 2022. Fantastic quality, fantastic, clean fruit. But this year they were quite shy on even flowering. They didn't even want to flower much because they're going to take a year's rest. So we don't want that really. We set too much fruit the previous year, clearly. We want to have more balance. Here's the difference I wanted to show you. Quite stark contrast between, on the left-hand side, a tree growing in the ground, and then on the right-hand side, the same Sugar Bell trees growing in pots. And you can see the difference in fruit set. Now, I'm positive that with a bit of research, we can solve the problems of Sugar Bell growing in the ground by doing something, manipulating the roots, perhaps, girdling, perhaps. There's so many tools these days we can use to fix the problem so that we get the same results as in pots. All right, let's move on then to the regenerative agriculture and IPM and cups using beneficial bacteria and fungi. So Laura Cano Castro pictured here, she's a master student. She's done a lot of this work. But by introduction, I just want to mention also that entomopathogenic fungi, insect and mite biocontrol products are also part of this group, really. It's part of the regenerative agriculture. So those are fungi that you can use in sprays, and they will, it's spores that you spray out, and they fall on the insects or on leaf surfaces, and they get onto the insects, grow on them, and kill the insects. So that's the entomopathogenic fungi. The second bullet there is mycorrhizal fungi, which form symbiotic relationships with roots. So I pointed out the first two because they're all biological remedies that could be used, but I'm not going to focus on those. Those are beyond what we've studied so far. The next one, the third one, is the soil bacteria. We're really interested in those because we're soil scientists too. I'm a soil scientist. So the main group we really wanted to test is plant growth promoting bacteria, or PGPB, and also the biofungicides, because they have scope when sprayed on the canopy to actually prevent some of the diseases, or at least manage the diseases that occur on leaves, like greasy spot. So we are conducting most of our research on the Bacillus species, and the purposes are to control fungal diseases on leaves and fruit. Greasy spot and melanose are the two main diseases we have in our cups, and we were able to study. We also wanted to boost tree health and fruit production and reduce fertilizer inputs by being more efficient with nutrient uptake. And this I thought, rather than show you a graph or numbered data, there were significant results, and you can see why. Because if you can see growth differences with your eye, it means they're significant generally. And what's going on here, this was over 4 months of Duncan grapefruit seedling growth. So we did a detailed replicated multi-treatment greenhouse experiment using Duncan grapefruit seedlings in pots. And this was grown over 4 months. The control received only water. So they were first of all grown with fertilizer as usual, with no treatments, just to get them established. But at the point of inception of the treatments, the control got nothing more except water, all right, for 4 months. This treatment got Bacillus velezensis, which is the commercial product. I'll go back to it real quick. It's the Lalrise Vita here, this bag on the top left. The other one we're comparing is double nickel 55. And so the Lalrise Vita happens to be this organism, Bacillus velezensis. It's really useful. See what it did just without any fertilizer. The leaves are greener and the tree looks more thrifty. Then the next one is adding extra fertilizer with no biological product. And then the cumulative effect, or the synergistic effect, of the Bacillus velezensis plus fertilizer produced the best growth. Yeah. So there is some synergy there, adding fertilizer and the biological product, the plant growth promoting product. How do they promote growth? Well, they increase root growth also. We measured that out of when we took the pot experiment apart. At the end of the experiment, we found that the root mass was increased, root length was increased. So that obviously improves uptake of nutrients and everything. And we quantified that also there was a significant increase in leaf nitrogen in these trees that had velezensis. And also, as you can see, shoot growth was increased. So it does multiple things. Part of it, I believe, is mediated by plant growth regulators itself. These bacteria do produce their own plant growth hormones. the auxins, cytokinins, and even gibberellic acids, various types of gibberellins. I don't know in what quantities, but it's listed in the literature that that's some of the byproducts that they produce. They also produce antibiotics. Think about that. That's a high value. So it can help keep the roots healthier and the leaves healthier. And that's what we're going to look at next. What does it do if you use it as a spray? So this is a different experiment conducted in our main cups with Ray Ruby grapefruit, that same Ray Ruby you saw in the photos. And it was a spray experiment in 2022 to evaluate the efficacy of biofungicide sprays to manage melanose and greasy spot, mainly emphasizing peel blemishes. But we also looked at its effect on the leaves. But the most important thing is what does it do to fruit, keeping the fruit peeled clean so that you get higher pack out. And so treatments were control, Bacillus amyloliquefaciens, which happens to be the double nickel product, and that's straight out the bag. And then we also thought, well, what if we grow some in a bioreactor and we use it fresh? Is there an advantage to that? So this is the same organism, but grown in our own bioreactor. And then there was a experimental triple isolate, which our microbiologist here, Neon Wong's group, had produced, and I think they'd written an article on it. It's basically 3 types of Bacillus subtilis, three isolates or selection. And they were quite excited about that with canker control. So we thought, well, let's try it in this experiment as a greasy spot and melanose control. And finally, of course, a positive control was needed. We have copper as COSAR 3000. We followed the label with COSAR every 3 weeks, which was actually a lot. We just sprayed by calendar every 3 weeks, not based on residues or anything like that. But that's what the label says. And if you have a problem with these diseases, triple bacillus, speaking to microbiologists, they recommend it every 3 weeks. The labels on double nickel and in the bag, which is this one, is to spray every week. So I know it's a lot, but we had to get proof of concept. So that means 24 applications. And we did the same with the fresh double nickel. So yes, it's a lot of sprays. I think we need to still refine that down to make it more economically viable, but we wanted to see what can it do. All right. And sure enough, it can do a lot. Quite pleased with this. Greasy spot incidence on fruit at harvest, on the grapefruit. You can see the control had the highest incidence of greasy spot. Double nickel out the bag had the lowest and significantly lower, statistically significant. The fresh double nickel was not different from out the bag, so no benefit of it apparently, which was good to find out. So the bagged stuff coming from the shop is really good. And then the isolate here, the triple isolate did not do significantly better than the control, unfortunately. And interesting that copper sprays at the recommended spray frequency were not as good as the biological products, say the double nickel. Okay, looking at melanose incidence, that's the different disease, and very interesting that copper actually, it was not significantly different from the control. It had a real hard time controlling the melanose. I have no idea why. It's on the label. And again, the double nickel did really well, a significantly better control of melanose. And the triple isolate even did something too. Let's look at some pictures. This is double nickel. And you can see, this is probably the best shot here. You can see there's virtually nothing visible. I think there's a tiny bit of melanose there, but it really suppresses it. Just another shot, different fruit, double nickel. And here's COSAR 3000. That's the copper fungicide. And you can see all that melanose there. Again, COSAR 3000. Now you can see why our scores and the numbers were higher for that than for the biologicals. Here's the control, of course. You can see both melanose and greasy spot, as you would expect. And again, this is a really severely affected control, unsprayed fruit. So it's interesting that the copper does quite a good greasy spot control in our particular circumstances here, but it did not do, it did virtually nothing for melanose control, which is bad. All right, just some general visual results. We used, we started using these bacterial products quite extensively in our cups, mainly from fresh brewed stuff we produce, just to see how it would work. But like I said, you really should use it out the bag, because that seems to be as good, if not better, than what we can produce in a bioreactor, and it's much easier. So we used it in the whole cup starting from February 2022, mainly as a soil injection, as a soil drench through the drip system. And tree growth and health have been visually boosted, especially in our mercots. Most varieties set more fruit this year, in that particular year, that is last year, and we applied after applying the beneficial bacteria. And noteworthy was that early pride set the most fruit to date, and that is usually quite a shy setting of fruit on early pride. The Lalraz Vita label recommends 2 to 3 applications in the early growing season at monthly intervals, so it's not a lot really. You can probably get by with 1 even. Right at bloom is what we would say if you want to try it. And spray applications of double nickel were more effective than calcite copper applications to control greasy spot and melanose on ray ruby grapefruit, and we've discussed that already. And lastly, thought this would interest some of you. We thought of the problem of establishing a cups with the high cost that's incurred with it. It's not cheap, and not getting sellable fruit in the first year or two. With a very high density like we use, we know we can do that at the end of the first year. So in the second year, we can get a commercial yield. But commercial sized cups, which are hundreds of acres, they plant the trees at a much lower density. 360 is fairly common, trees per acre. So therefore, they would probably only hit the commercially viable yield at the end of the second year. I've heard of them getting as much as 400 boxes at 2.5 years. So getting into the third year. So getting back to what I was about to say then is, well, what do you do in the first 2 years? You're sitting with no income, no revenue. To improve the cash flow, we thought of looking at this double cropping. Papaya is a very valuable fruit. I think there's no question about that. Most of it's imported still, but some of it is grown domestically in Florida. And it grows extremely fast. It's a herb, basically. So these trees, believe it or not, the citrus trees that you see here and the papayas are the same age. And so the idea was papayas become fully productive at 7 months. And so you can, for at least a year, maybe a year and a half, produce a papaya crop if this works, to pay the bills. And in the meantime, if the citrus trees do not get harmed by the shading, that's what we were testing here. And you can see it didn't look like they were harmed at all. And they already set fruit after 1 year. This is, I think, Valencia in the foreground. These were Valencias and Hamlins we planted down the row. So that's the idea. Now, it's just a demonstration. It's not a scientifically replicated experiment, but the concept is interesting. So I thought you'd like to see that photo. All right, if there's any time for questions, I appreciate your time, and I wanted to acknowledge all the grants that have supported this research listed here, and especially the growers, stakeholders, and cooperators, extension agents, my laboratory and support staff, and other staff at IFAS. It's a team effort, and I've enjoyed the ride. I think we've answered a lot of questions. And I think the research in a large part has been substantially completed. So I'm really, my focus, I think, I'd like to shift more to more fully supporting the commercial cups wherever I can. I don't have anything much in the, unless something comes up to do future work in our own research cups here. But that could change. But let's get some questions and comments and see what you folks think.
Dr. Schumann, Dr. Mike Burton from SWFREC has a question. Dr. Burton said, you mentioned cups grapefruit root circling pot.
We can't hear you very well.
Pot bound condition at 6 years. Did you manage the pot bound roots in some way, i.e. cutting at transplanting of trees from pots to soil to encourage lateral growth?
Yeah, we used air pots, which as the roots reach the edges of the pots internally, they tend to stick out of those holes in the sides of the pots. That's what they're called, air pots. And the air, on contact with air, they get pruned back. And that prevents circling. So we use the best possible pots for their job, and they really do help. In the early days, 5 years back, first few years of us running the cups research here, we did a comprehensive experiment testing 3 or 4 different designs of pots and sizes. And these ones that we settled with, which are the air pots, were by far the best. We actually examined the roots and the circling process. A smooth round, what they call nursery pot, doesn't work. The trees will kill themselves in the first 3 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So we have a second question. Was irrigation
all for
quantity
joining
in
us.
cups versus outdoor grown
ahead,
measured?
Yes, it was in the first few years. We measured mainly in the, we didn't measure it directly as irrigation output because we didn't have a direct comparison, but we measured the evapotranspiration through a comprehensive weather station that we have installed here. So we were able to calculate evapotranspiration demand, and it is about 25% less in the cups than outdoors. So from that, we gauge that we are using less water. Without the direct replica outdoors, it's difficult to do that, especially because of the impacts of HLB on any trees that are growing outdoors. They use less water because they're smaller.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone else online? Mongi, you can go ahead. I think that's all.
Again, if you are interested about CEU, send me an email with your email address and license number. And thank you all for joining us, and see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Take care.
Dr.
Thank
Schumann.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.